Whether you're going to open a hobby shop, a sporting goods store, a store for fabric, crafts, and quilting, a souvenir shop, or a clothing boutique. The first and most important step is choosing the right type of retail business for you. In this video, we'll walk through some of the basics in making that decision based on your interests, your community, and your goals. You're not just opening a store. You want to develop the type of business that fits you and has a real shot at success. So stick around to the end of the video and I will run by you 50 different ideas for the type of retail business you might be interested in. Consider your interests, your passions, and your experience. You might ask yourself, do you enjoy working alone or in a team? Would you like to have interaction with customers on a one-to-one basis? Or perhaps you're more comfortable in an online type of business? What kind of lifestyle do you want your business to support? Do you want flexibility, or are you okay with long retail hours like weekends and holidays? Are you comfortable taking financial risks, or do you need something low cost and steady to start with? Are you building a side hustle? Is this going to be your full-time job, or thinking long-term, is this going to be an asset that you plan on selling someday? Are you willing to learn things like marketing, bookkeeping, sourcing, or technology? Do you want to be seen as a pillar in your community, a local shopkeeper everybody knows, or would you rather operate behind the scenes? So be honest, do you have the energy and physical stamina for a hands-on store, or do you need a business that allows more pacing and flexibility? Do you prefer a business that lets you be creative, like merchandising or content creation? Or do you work better with clear daily routines and systems? A vital step in the process in determining what type of retail business you're going to open is in knowing the market in which you're going to open this business. Look at your town or area. What is missing in terms of businesses? Are there underserved niches? Who lives there? Tourists, retirees, families? You need to consider the demographics. Use tools such as Google Trends, the Chamber of Commerce, local Facebook groups. I was looking on Facebook the other day, and there's a local group that had a question asked by one of its members that said, what type of business would you like to see open here in our area? And there were all sorts of suggestions, but there were some common ones. For instance, a clothing and shoe store came up several times. A car wash came up several times. And there were several others. So that's a resource that you can use in trying to determine what type of business would do well in the community where you live. Another step in the process for determining what type of retail business you're going to open is understanding retail models. Do you want to open a brick and mortar store? So this is going to be the type of store where the physical location has an address out front, a place that you have to build fixtures into your space, depending on what you're selling, of course, and you're going to pay rent for it. So that's one. Another type of business would be what's called a pop-up shop. Now, you might think about Halloween time and you'll see a store that might be normally vacant, and all of a sudden it's a Halloween costume and decoration store. When I lived in Idaho, I was surprised when I saw pop-up shops in the form of firework shops. I live in Arizona, and fireworks are for the most part illegal. But in Idaho and other parts of the country, they're very legal. And so during the 4th of July, the weeks before that, you'd see these shops just pop up out of nowhere selling all sorts of fireworks. Next would be examples of mobile businesses. Think of food trucks or a farmer's market where individuals bring their produce from their gardens. So you're familiar with product-based businesses, like we've talked about, a business where you walk into a store and you buy things, physical things that you take home with you. There are also service-based businesses. For instance, a vocal studio where you learn how to sing. So you're not buying a tangible physical thing, you're buying a lesson. A pet grooming business, self-explanatory. A bike repair shop. So you go in to have your bicycle fixed as opposed to buying a new bicycle. Those are just some examples of service-based businesses. You can also combine the two. Your budget really matters. Lots of people like me, when they first get into business, have a fairly limited budget. So you start small, kind of prove your concept, and grow from there. Some easy ways, lower cost ways to start would be online, or you could basically go into a shop that leases out space inside of that shop for a small booth, you might say. I've seen those in big antique stores where the product in the booth may not be antiques, but they might have a theme like baseball cards or die-cast model cars. So those are just a couple ideas of entry level. A little more expensive is going to be a full storefront where you have to fixturize your store. What I mean by fixturize is you get the shelves and display cabinets, display cases, mannequins if you have a boutique. So that type of thing costs money, and you have to budget for that up front. Also, putting merchandise on all of those shelves can be a very costly, time-consuming experience. Hiring people to fill those shelves is an expense that you need to budget for. So these are all areas that we will go into in much greater depth in future videos, but just something to keep in mind is, how are you going to pay for it? So here's a few common mistakes that you really want to avoid. One would be choosing a trendy topic for your business rather than a sustainable one. The thought comes to mind in my hobby shop days where pogs became very popular overnight, but it was kind of a flash in the pan. They were popular, sold a lot of them over a very short amount of time, and then the demand for them completely dried up. So something sustainable versus something that has a short-term lifespan of demand by the public. Another mistake you want to avoid is underestimating or ignoring your competition. You need to be able to offer something that your competitors aren't offering. Lots of times that comes in the form of excellent customer service or some sort of a slightly different product offering. However, depending on the size of your market, getting into something, a type of retail that is already well served, is a mistake you probably want to avoid. Another mistake you don't want to make is ignoring customer demand. The whole reason we're here as entrepreneurs and as business owners is to fill a need. So if you are just creating this need, you're pretending like it exists, probably going to be a big mistake. You need to be able to research what your community is looking for and fill that need. Another common mistake that you'll want to avoid is not having hands-on experience in the type of business you're going to open. I'll talk about that here in just a little bit when I give you a personal story. So let me give you an example from my life and how I ended up in retail. I had worked as a youngster for a place called Yellowfront. It was a small department store, and I think I was a junior in high school when I started working there. So what did I learn from that experience that might prepare me later on for ownership or management of a retail business? I learned customer service. I learned ordering, shipping and receiving. I learned something about profit margin. I learned something about inventory and ordering. So there's all sorts of little components that you just kind of accidentally stumble upon when you're working for a business like this. And I worked for several other places. There was one occasion where I was in college. I was studying to be an aeronautical engineer. And part of the curriculum was you had to work as an apprentice for an engineer. Well, I went down and interviewed with an engineer, didn't get the job, but on my way home, I stopped by the local hobby shop, which I frequently visited. I was a fairly avid hobbyist. I built plastic models. I launched model rockets. I flew model airplanes, that sort of thing. So I had kind of a quasi-working knowledge of the product that the hobby shop sold. So I applied for the job and I was hired. I worked in this location for about 3 months, and the owner offered me a job as a manager of one of his locations. And I took it. So some of the things that I learned um, by working for this gentleman that owned these hobby stores and being paid for this education was customer service. It's probably the biggest thing that I learned, how to deal with customers, both happy customers and upset customers, because you get those as well. I learned how to deal with employees and all the things that working with employees includes, such as payroll and how to budget for your payroll out of your gross income. I learned how to pay bills. I learned what dating meant. I learned how to negotiate a lease. I learned how to work with the city government when we had to, say, get a new sign put on the building. So there's lots and lots of things that I learned by actually working hands-on in my, what I call my apprenticeship in the hobby business. Although I was working and being paid, because that was my vocation now, to be a manager in a retail location, but I was also learning. So I learned all of the things that you need to know to run a business. I would not have learned this in a classroom. I do have a degree in business management, but they don't teach you how to put merchandise on a shelf. They don't teach you the proper way to place a price tag on a box of merchandise. So that is a piece of advice that I'm going to give you. When you're going to choose the type of retail business that you're going to work in, either work in that field, go find a store somewhere and get a part-time job there. It could be on the weekends when you're not working your regular 9-to-5 job, or you might even want to volunteer and work your way into the company a little bit and get to learn the processes and procedures on how the business is run. That is invaluable information that you simply can't get in any other way other than hands-on experience. So there are some basics that I've given you for trying to determine what type of business you want to open. It's not horribly difficult, but it's a very serious process that you have to go through to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. Now, I told you at the beginning that I would have a list of 50 different ideas for you for a retail business, and they'll run by here in just a moment. So stick around as we continue on with our retail basics and our retail 101 explanation on how to run a business. We will have deeper dives down into budgets, choosing locations, product mixes, dealing with distributors. Anything you can think of, we're going to cover. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. Hope to see you soon.